Alright, hello everyone. I felt like making a video, so I dug through some old canons and I found a concept that I hadn't really explored or explained on my YouTube channel. So I made a crappy little test cannon up, sort of to show you what it is, how it works, and hopefully some people might use it on complex. So for those who aren't familiar with what I have here, obviously it's like webbust wiring. But in this case here, what I've got is I have the power wired up to effectively what is a bypass, and that turns this setup. It's aptly named a webbust bypass. So instead of it being, say, bypass where you hit your adjust, say if you hit your adjust here. If you put your adjust here, it'll go forwards and it'll bypass everything in this row. This setup here bypasses everything sort of along the adjust, as well as it does something called corner busting. So in this case here, I've got these pillars deliberately set up poorly. So you can see that there's like basically a dry spot in between them. And what this webbust bypass here does is it abuses the dry spot in between the pillars, and it effectively just blows up TNT in the middle here, and opens holes in pillars, even though these are all fully watered. So there's a multitude of different ways you can do this. You don't need to have the entire power web busted. Say if you have like 150 power, say if you have 150 power that is like wired off observers, and then you've got 150 power that's say wired off like redstone bypass like this, you will not like web bust for the first few chunks of your adjust, but you'll web bust in the end. So you don't need a web bust along the entire buffer. You can basically pick out a spot that you want to web bust. That will be the furthest spot on your adjust, and that can be where you focus most of your rating. So what I'll do here is I'll just fire it once, and I'll just show you what it does. You will notice, see that line of explosions there? That's the web bust bypass going out that way. And this is what it did to those pillars. So you corner busted a bunch of these pillars, and cracked them basically open along the entire adjust. Now, the reason why it does that diagonal thing there is because I have this web busted. So basically, it's rendering some power, some web bust, some power, some web bust, and the way it alternates is it basically explodes power first, and then it goes forwards and out, explodes there, and then it goes for. So it goes power, web bust, and then like that web bust explodes here, and then it renders another piece of power, followed by another piece of web bust, renders here, and then so on and so forth. Now I've got this row of dispensers up here. This row of dispensers is quite important. This is not rendered at the same time as the webbust bypass. This is rendered a little bit before, and that's just so you can basically clear the barrel with your webbust bypass. So if I fire that again, you'll see that it explodes out a little bit further. It doesn't explode directly at the barrel. See, it explodes like a little bit further there, so it's out of the cannon. And if I turn that off there, it might not work at all, actually. We'll see. Yeah. So basically what happened there is I actually have some of my like my webbust bypass rendered before the power, and because that explodes first, that basically just pushes the power back and it totally screws with the barrel. So often you want a little bit of that pre-rendered TNT there, and in most cases, say for complex, if you're trying to cut down on lag, what I would personally do is do like probably a 1-to-3 ratio. So if you've got like 1-to-3 ratio of webbust power and like say standard rendered power, and that basically means at the very end here, say out over here, that's where your webbust is going to be taking effect. So you're not going to be webbusting along the entire way. You'll just be webbusting in a small area, so you can line that area up with a spawner box, and that will basically allow you to save TNT while still having the benefits of the webbust bypass. So again, that's just it's basically you trying to work around the issue of like the diagonal TNT there. because of course, like if you have a lot of TNT rendered here, that diagonal is not going to like take effect until you're like several tracks away because you have all that TNT rendered before, and you'll get a lot more range on your webbust bypass. Alternatively, you can make the entire cannon webbust bypass, webbust along the entire wall, and then subsequently crash the server. So that's also an alternative. So speed for this thing, I'm pretty sure this RSB setup runs at 0.4, which is fine for complex because complex speed limit is 0.5 regardless. So this sort of wiring will work for complex. You can also use the observer wall wiring. I personally use or prefer to use the webbust, not the webbust, the redstone bypass wiring because you get better density with your webbust bypass. Oh, sorry, someone was typing in chat, but he's a 1.8 player, so he's a bit subhuman. Oh, I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, so the redstone bypass basically gets much better density because it is like a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not one rendering like three webbust and then like three power, 3 webbust, 3 power. So it's a lot more evenly distributed along the wall. Now there's a lot of different things you can do with this. You could potentially have webbust bypass in your first and second power. I wouldn't recommend that because you might end up pushing away your shots, or you just might say clear a bit of the wall, get your sand shot in there, and then you're going to clear a bit more of the wall, and then the cannon's going to fail to stack, and that sort of thing there. Now the good thing about this webbust bypass here is it's going to be pretty easy to toggle. Say if you have all your power on, say, this webbust bypass setup here, then you're going to really struggle to toggle it. But if you have like a main power and then like your webbust bypass power, you can easily then turn that off. Now for the actual cannon and for the setup, it is quite important not to have an X guider. Because that X guider will basically stop the webbust bypass from going further on through that point. So my preferred setup with these webbust bypass cannons is I would commonly use a cobblestone wall here. The reason for that is you can basically I would clip your main shots into the chest here. So if you say align your sand to that chest there, and then you can render your webbust bypass like a little bit higher. And if you hit the wall with that webbust bypass, what that will basically look like is you can put a trapdoor here. If you put a trapdoor here and then you open it like that, your sand will hit the bottom of the trapdoor, and then your sand goes along through there, and then your actual webbust bypass will hit this block here. So you can leave no adjust for your webbust bypass, and you can have an adjust for your trapdoor. This is how I used to do it. I haven't made a webbust in quite a while, so I'm sure anyone with a bit more brain power than I have would be able to find a more efficient setup for that instead. But yeah, hopefully some people actually pick this up on Complex, because I haven't seen these being used much on Complex, even though they are very, very easy to implement. I find I've made a couple of like very, very fast webbust bypasses. But hey, hopefully with this concept having a bit more exposure, some more people will pick it up and run with it. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new, and I'll catch you later.